4:47 a.m., Osage Beach, Missouri. May 19, 2026. 11 rubber assault rafts cut silently across the black surface of the Lake of the Ozarks, engines off, paddles pulling through still water toward the marina docks. 240 federal agents had been staged in position since midnight. No radio transmissions. No movement. 4 hours of total silence in a tree line that surrounded 3 separate parking areas, 2 staging lots, and a state patrol forward command post. The signal was a single floodlight mounted on the lead boat. It activated at 4:47 a.m., and 11 marinas across 4 states moved simultaneously. Breaching charges blew the storage warehouse at Dale Harvik's lakefront compound before the echo reached the water. K-9 teams were already on the dock. The first narcotics alert came 4 minutes and 12 seconds after initial breach from a Catahoula retriever named Jackson, attached to the DEA's Oklahoma City Tactical Unit. He moved through 3 tournament boats in sequence, clearing each in under 30 seconds. At the 4th boat, a 30-foot Ranger base rig near the facility's center row, he stopped, sat down beside the aft compartment, and did not move. The compartment held enough fentanyl to keep prosecutors cataloging for weeks. In the first 90 minutes of the operation, K-9 teams recorded positive alerts on 38 of the 47 designated pro-team boats. 38 boats tested positive, one after another. By 5:45 a.m., 83 people were in federal custody across 4 states. By 6 a.m., agents had located $12 million in cash inside fiberglass tackle boxes in a climate-controlled storage room at the Osage Beach compound. 44 boxes, vacuum-sealed and heat-shrunk, stacked on metal shelving in alphabetical order by lake name. By morning, it was the largest inland fentanyl seizure in the history of the DEA's Southwest Division. This operation didn't start the usual way. No informant, border intercept, financial tip, or wiretap. It started with a 71-year-old retired game warden, a camera phone with a failing battery, and one specific sound, the hum of an 800-gallon-per-hour submersible pump running at full draw on a boat sitting on dry land in a tournament parking lot in October 2025. How a family fishing weekend became a federal drug case touching 4 states, 70 modified vessels, and $380 million in product starts with a retired game warden and a camera phone. It involves a tournament circuit that had spent 6 years building the kind of institutional legitimacy that makes law enforcement attention unlikely. Dale Harvik, 44, had been a minor league competitive bass angler in his 20s before a shoulder injury ended his casting career. He pivoted to event management in 2019, running small tournaments out of a single lake in Stone County, Missouri. By 2021, the circuit had grown to 5 lakes. By late 2023, he owned 6 marinas. He employed 17 full-time staff. He had legitimate sponsorship contracts with regional advertisers and Walmart's Missouri-Arkansas retail division. The circuit's public Facebook page had 44,000 followers and had been profiled by 2 regional fishing publications. By October 2025, the Heartland Bass Tournament Circuit was operating 140 events per year across 23 lakes in Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Entry fees of $45 per angler. Junior leagues for children. Live-streamed weigh-ins on Facebook. 8,000 registered participants. On paper, on screen, and in every public record, it was exactly what it presented itself as. A Midwestern fishing tournament, Saturday mornings, a line in the water, family tradition. The 47 boats designated as the circuit's pro-team fleet were not ordinary fishing rigs. Each had been sourced from 2 marine suppliers in South Texas between January and September of 2025. Each had been delivered to one of Harvik's 6 marinas, where a 7-man crew operating out of a rented workshop at a commercial storage facility in Warsaw, Missouri, had spent approximately 30 hours per vessel performing a specific modification to the Livewell system. A factory base boat Livewell is a water circulation tank, typically 30 to 40 gallons, designed to oxygenate live fish during competitive events. The modification the Warsaw crew performed created a false floor inside each Livewell. Vacuum-sealed fiberglass panels, precision cut to match the original interior dimensions, installed 3 inches below the factory waterline marker. Below the false floor was a sealed storage cavity, 14 inches deep, running the full length of the tank. The only access point was a concealed hatch built into the aft storage compartment, set behind the factory drain plug housing. Capacity per boat, 24 kilograms. The modification was not visible from the outside. A casual inspection of the Livewells interior showed a standard tank. A surface sweep by K9 dog handlers working a routine marina check encountered nothing. The cavity had a feature that ensured the latter. The factory live well pump, an 800-gallon-per-hour submersible, remained wired to the cavities. Ventilation port, not to circulate water. The pump maintained continuous negative pressure inside the sealed space, preventing fentanyl's chemical signature from migrating outward into the boat's main air volume. K9 narcotics dogs work on air scent. Without outward air movement carrying a signature, detection dogs performing a sweep had nothing to alert on. The system created a dead zone. For most of 2025, it performed exactly as designed. They built the distribution around the tournament calendar. Bass tournament schedules are public documents, posted weeks in advance, with registered participants and hull identification numbers, visible to anyone who checked the circuit's official website. 47 pro team boats had guaranteed entries in the top tier of every event. They moved between lakes on a published, predictable schedule, trailered on public interstate highways, stopping at public rest areas, passing through state police wait stations without incident. Cartel chemists operating out of a warehouse at 4410 North Sheridan Avenue in Tulsa, Oklahoma, pressed fentanyl into 2-kilogram bricks, 12 per vacuum-sealed polymer batch, 24 kilograms per delivery. 1 batch per protein boat per run. At street distribution value, each sealed cavity held product worth approximately $8 million. 47 boats. Weekly transits. 4 states. The exchange at each tournament weigh-in was engineered down to seconds. Weigh-ins are public, photographed events, officials documenting catch weights, anglers holding up fish, spectators gathering at the dock. While that activity absorbed attention at the front of each vessel, a member of Harvik's official event staff, badged, polo-shirted, with a documented reason to be adjacent to every registered boat, would move to the aft compartment at the stern. The DEA's forensic reconstruction, based on undercover footage recorded between December 2025 and April 2026, timed the exchange. Product from the sealed cavity to a tournament ice chest to a waiting vehicle in the adjacent parking area. 11 seconds. The money laundering moved through Harvik's marina businesses at a constant, documented ratio. Each bait shop reported 12 times its actual sales volume on paper. Tournament entry fees, collected in cash, entered into Harvik's event management software, were skimmed at a flat 23% before deposit across all 140 annual events, with the full amount logged in the reported total. 3 LLCs, 6 facilities, paper trails that presented as a profitable and legitimate marine retail operation. Between October 2025 and January 2026, the network laundered $87 million through those channels. What none of the network's principals had accounted for was Gerald Hutchins. Hutchins, 71, had worked 28 years for the Missouri Department of Conservation. Most of that career was on the water, boat inspections, license checks, equipment compliance surveys. He knew base boat systems the way a mechanic knows engine cycles. He had retired from active service and was volunteering at a tournament weigh-in station at the Lake of the Ozarks on the 3rd Saturday of October 2025. He was standing near the trailer staging area, about 40 feet from the registration tent, when he heard it. A tournament boat had been trailered to the staging area for the weigh-in. The anglers from that boat were at the registration table. The hull was on dry land, pulled clear of the water, sitting on its trailer with no water in the bilge, no hull fill, no circulation system primed. There was no operational reason for any pump on that boat to be drawing power. The live well pump was running. Hutchins walked around the stern of the boat. He could hear the 800-gallon-per-hour submersible clearly, a sustained rhythmic draw that had no function in a dry hull. He crouched behind the stern and followed the sound to a ventilation line that disappeared behind the aft storage panel, feeding into something sealed and pressurized inside the hull. The pump intake was dry, no water moving through it. The motor was drawing air through a concealed line to somewhere inside the boat. He took photographs with his phone. The ventilation line, the modified panel seam where the factory drain plug housing had been altered. He shot 14 frames before his camera battery died. That evening, he printed the photographs at a drugstore near his home in Camdenton. He didn't use a hotline. He printed the photographs and mailed them to a former colleague at the DEA's Kansas City field office. Paper photographs, paper envelope, standard postal service. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning in late October 2025. DEA Special Agent Renata Kowalski opened the envelope that same afternoon. She looked at the photographs. She pulled the boat's hull identification number from Coast Guard Registry and Missouri Department of Revenue records. The vessel was registered to Ozarks Pro Fishing Operations, LLC. The LLC shared a mailing address with one of Harvik's marina businesses. She ran the LLC's corporate registration filings. 3 officers of record. 2 names triggered cross-references in federal database systems. 1 from a DEA task force file in Wichita, Kansas. 1 from an ATF investigation in Western Tennessee. Not confirmed participants in those earlier investigations. Database cross-references only. But the combination, a modified pump on a dry hull, a corporate address shared with a marina, 2 officers with agency file associations, was enough to open a preliminary inquiry. She opened one that afternoon. Financial data returned within 30 days. The 3 LLCs were internally clean. Documented revenues, recorded expenses, regular payroll deposits. But one pattern appeared immediately. Across all 3 entities, across 12 consecutive quarters, the ratio of cash deposits to card transaction revenue held at exactly 4.7 to 1. In marine retail, that ratio typically falls between 1.1 and 1.8. A 4.7 ratio, held perfectly constant across 3 separate business entities for 3 years, was not a variance. It was a mechanism. Kowalski filed a Title III wiretap application in November 2025. The court authorized it in December. What the first 6 weeks of intercepts revealed was not what the task force had expected. Harvik and his operations staff communicated about the drug movement almost entirely through tournament language. Product volumes were logged as entries. Transit confirmations were weigh-in updates. Distribution contacts were referenced by lake name, the Beaver Lake account, the Table Rock client, the Kentucky booking. The language was internally consistent, and to anyone without the mapping context, completely indistinguishable from ordinary competitive event administration. Breaking the code required cross-referencing 431 individual phone calls against the circuit's public event calendar over 6 weeks, pairing every coded phrase against confirmed tournament dates, boat movements, and delivery windows. The task force built the dictionary from scratch, without the network making a single operational error. Most people assume investigations break from a mistake. Someone talks explicitly. A courier gets loose. An accountant makes an error. This one didn't. The investigators mapped the code. They built the cipher from the outside, slowly, without any single point of failure. That's a different class of investigative work. Slower, more vulnerable, dependent on sustained analytical effort that doesn't appear in press conference summaries. Then, in mid-January 2026, a single number surfaced that changed everything. The circuit was publicly running 47 pro team boats on the tournament calendar. But communications from the Tulsa prepaid number, the number assigned to the warehouse production facility, repeatedly referenced product, allocation sized for 70 boats. Not 47, 70. 23 additional vessels had been prepared with identical false floor modifications and stored in dry stack facilities across 3 states. They were available as replacement vessels if the active fleet was compromised by seizure or federal scrutiny. The task force had been watching 47 boats. The actual network was 70. The task force now faced a decision: act on the confirmed 47, or expand the investigation to establish the full scope of the backup fleet. Either option carried risk. Acting early would secure 47 boats, but potentially miss the 23 alternates and the upstream production chain. Waiting longer meant additional product moving through 4 states while the investigation continued. Kowalski chose expansion. The decision cost 2 months and required a complete restructuring of the operational plan. It also made the May 19 operation possible. By February 2026, the task force needed physical access to one of the pro-team boats to document the cavity dimensions and confirm the product storage configuration. Wiretap intelligence had established that the modifications existed and described their operational function. But direct evidence, an agent physically inside a modified live well, documented on records, was still missing. The problem was access. All 47 active boats were stored in Harvik's 6 marina facilities. 3 of those marinas had enclosed dry stack storage with access-controlled entry. Physical inspection required either a search warrant, which would alert the network, or a reason to be inside those facilities without one. Every week the task force waited, product was moving. Every week they waited for direct evidence, the risk of a parallel investigation, or an unrelated enforcement contact disrupting the networks. Operations grew. Put yourself in the position of an investigator who knows exactly what's happening inside a building she can't legally enter, who has documented 7 months of coded phone calls, traced 3 levels of LLC structure, and confirmed a drug network moving $8 million per boat per week, and who cannot move. The solution was undercover insertion. A DEA agent with competitive bass fishing experience was processed under a cover identity in January 2026. He had fished the Louisiana Regional Tournament Circuit for several years before joining the agency. His cover included a registered boat, a documented competition history, and references from 2 circuit organizers who had been formally briefed on the operation. He entered the Heartland Bass Tournament Circuit as a new pro-team applicant. The first 3 tournaments produced nothing. He competed, placed in the middle tier, interacted with Harvik's event staff as a routine new participant. He was assessed. He was watched. No overtures. At the 4th tournament, a February 2026 event at Beaver Lake, Arkansas, a member of Harvik's event staff approached him after the weigh-in with an offer of what was described as a fuel card upgrade. That phrase appeared 17 times in the wiretap transcripts over the following 6 weeks. Each occurrence corresponded to a confirmed product transit. Each confirmed a transport chain link. The undercover agent's physical presence in the circuit provided the evidentiary bridge that connected phone intelligence to real-world boat movements for the first time in the investigation. He competed in 6 tournaments total between January and March of 2026. There's a detail that stayed with me going through the case documentation. At a March 2026 event at Table Rock Lake, Missouri, the undercover agent timed a product handoff without being asked to, on his own initiative, out of professional observation. He logged the exchange in his field report at 9.7 seconds. The DEA's later public reconstruction cited 11 seconds as the benchmark. He was faster, more precise, and his report noted, the practiced efficiency of the exchange was the most disturbing single observation across 6 tournaments. He wrote that in federal bureaucratic language in a field report. That's a line that doesn't appear in press releases. By March 2026, the task force had confirmed 7 complete distribution transits. Downstream contacts in 4 cities had been identified and placed under surveillance. The Tulsa warehouse had been located, and its exterior placed under continuous monitoring, its phone lines added to the intercept array. Harvik's LLC structure had been traced through 4 shell company layers to a financial intermediary, with documented connections to a supply chain network originating in northern Mexico. They had the full picture. On April 3, 2026, Kowalski submitted the full operational plan to the DEA's Southwest Division Command in Dallas. What came back 4 days later was not approval. It was a counter-proposal. The ATF's Tulsa field office had been running a parallel investigation of the warehouse at 44111 North Sheridan Avenue for 6 weeks, initiated through a completely separate intelligence thread involving an illegal arms inquiry. Their target was the production facility. Kowalski's target was the distribution network. Neither agency had been aware of the other's parallel effort, until the joint operational coordination process surfaced the overlap. The DEA wanted to pull the tournament boats first, working distribution before production. The ATF wanted simultaneous breach on the warehouse. Neither approach independently would prevent the other target from receiving a warning and going dark. The reconciliation took 3 weeks of interagency planning. The final operational plan required coordinated federal warrant authorization from 3 separate district courts, one in St. Louis, one in Little Rock, one in Tulsa. Synchronized breaches in 4 states and 1 additional jurisdiction. 14 K-9 teams. ATF tactical elements at 1 location, state SWAT at 3 others. 240 agents total. The synchronization itself was the core planning problem. Each location was in a different county, a different local jurisdiction, with different chain of command structures for state law enforcement cooperation. The operation required that no single early contact occur at any of the 11 marina sites, the warehouse, or the lakefront compound. 1 inadvertent alert, a patrol car that drove past a staging area too slowly, a marina employee who showed up early, a phone call from a defendant who noticed something, could trigger a communications blackout that would scatter the network before a single arrest was made. The solution was complete radio silence. From 11 p.m. on the evening of May 18 through the breach signal at 4:47 a.m. on May 19, no federal operational communications would transmit on standard frequencies. All 240 agents would be in position before blackout began. The activation signal, a single encrypted burst from Kowalski's command post, would reach each team leader's secure device simultaneously at the moment the floodlight activated on the assault raft. Then, on May 12, 2026, 7 days before the planned operation date, one of the 3 warrant packages was returned with a deficiency notice. A supporting affidavit had referenced evidence derived from a specific surveillance technique that required additional certification from a senior DEA official before the issuing judge would authorize. The certification request went to Washington on May 12. The supplemental affidavit was drafted, signed, and refiled on May 14. The court authorized the complete package on May 16, 2026. The operation date held. Barely. What this case reveals about federal coordination structures is uncomfortable. 3 weeks of interagency negotiation. A warrant deficiency that came within 72 hours of forcing a postponement. The fact that the DEA and ATF were independently working the same facility without awareness of each other for 6 weeks. The outcome here was a dismantled network. The close calls in the process should be examined more carefully than they typically are after a successful raid. The success of May 19 was partly excellent investigative work and partly timing. The 2 agencies reconciled. The warrant got certified. The security contractor completed his patrol and went back inside. Any one of those going differently, and this story ends with a network that got a phone call at 5 a.m. and dismantled itself. What stands out, Dale Harvik's tournament circuit was profitable on its own. Without the drug network, the circuit generated an estimated $3.2 million per year in legitimate revenue from entry fees, sponsorships, merchandise, and live stream arrangements. He had built a genuinely successful regional business. Investigators believe the cartel connection came through one of the LLC co-officers, the individual with the Kansas database cross-reference, who saw the circuit as a ready-made distribution channel and made the introduction. Harvik did not go looking for a cartel. A cartel identified his infrastructure and came to him. Kowalski's assessment in a May 2026 court filing stated it plainly. The circuit did not exist to facilitate drug distribution. The drug distribution was adapted to exploit the circuit's existing legitimacy. Harvik's sentence will likely be calibrated to the total volume of product moved through his network. How federal sentencing guidelines work in conspiracy cases. What the public record does not cleanly establish is how much of the network's full scope, the backup fleet, the Tulsa production chain, the financial intermediary, Harvik personally understood versus inherited when the LLC co-officer made the introduction. He signed the documents. He hired the Warsaw crew. He knew about the modified Livewells and what they carried. But whether the organizational structure he ran was his design or one he agreed to operate is a question the indictment answers with conspiracy law, not with evidence of specific intent at every decision point. He signed every LLC document and approved every modification. He knew. On the evening of May 17, 2026, staging began. 240 agents arrived in the operational areas by personal vehicle in civilian clothes over a 12-hour window that had been specifically timed to avoid drawing attention. Most came from pre-positioned safe houses. State patrol facilities served as forward command posts for 2 of the 4 state elements. 14 K-9 teams staged at a livestock facility in Hickory County that had been secured by the Missouri State Highway Patrol 3 days in advance. The tournament calendar, it turned out, had solved the timing problem the task force had struggled with during planning. The circuit had 2 events scheduled the week of May 19, one at Stockton Lake on May 17, one at Lake Barkley, Kentucky on May 24. That placed the bulk of the pro team fleet between events on the night of May 18, returned to the marinas, trailered and stored accessible. Breaching 2 days earlier would have caught a portion of the fleet on the water at Stockton Lake. 2 days later, and they would have been staged for transport to Kentucky. Harvik's own published schedule had identified the optimal window. The task force had been watching tournament calendars for 6 months specifically for this reason. At 11 p.m. on May 18, 2026, the last undercover field communication was logged. Kowalski was at the Camdenton command post. 6 monitors, satellite feeds from each target location, a direct line to DEA headquarters. She had been working this case since October 2025. 7 months. 312 surveillance logs. 431 transcribed and mapped phone calls. At 11:01 p.m., communications blackout began. There was one late complication the staging plans had not fully resolved. At the Pomme de Terre Lake Marina in Hickory County, a private security contractor employed by a licensed commercial security firm had an overnight patrol schedule that brought him through the main boat storage building at 4:30 a.m., 17 minutes before the planned breach. The contractor was a legitimate employee doing his job. He had no knowledge of the drug operation and was not a target of the investigation. If he completed his 4:30 patrol sweep and found the perimeter already staged, there was a significant probability he would call his supervisor, who would call the marina's overnight emergency contact, who would call Harvik. The team assigned to Pomme de Terre adjusted their entry approach that night. They shifted from the primary east-facing dock entry to a secondary north access point, reduced their immediate entry footprint, and coordinated with the state SWAT perimeter unit to intercept the contractor before he reached the main storage floor if the breach came early. The breach did not come early. The contractor completed his standard sweep at 4:36 a.m., returned to the security booth, and logged a routine entry in his shift report. He was escorted out peacefully when agents moved through the booth at 4:47 a.m. He was not charged with any offense. At 4:45 a.m., the assault rafts were on the water. Kowalski was at 6 monitors. Satellite telemetry from 11 locations. The DEA headquarters line was open but silent. She had 14 seconds between activating the floodlight and hearing the first breach charge detonate. She spent them watching the satellite feed from the Osage Beach compound, the marina dock, the dry stack storage building, the lakefront property where Harvik's main residence sat at the edge of the water. At 4:47 a.m., the floodlight activated. The encrypted burst transmitted simultaneously to all 11 team leaders. Breaching charges at the Osage Beach storage warehouse detonated 14 seconds later. 2 simultaneous blows on the building's access doors, front and rear. Smoke cleared in 6 seconds. Agents moved through in 2-man teams, 1 agent per side per boat. K-9 handlers moving ahead at each Livewell access point. Jackson, the DEA Catahoula from the Oklahoma City facility, cleared the first boat in 22 seconds, the second in 14. He moved to the third, the fourth, the fifth, clearing each one with trained efficiency. At 4 minutes and 12 seconds post-breach, he stopped at the 30-foot Ranger base rig near the center row, sat down, and did not move. The handler marked the boat, called it forward, and Jackson moved to the next vessel. By 5:20 a.m., the Osage Beach Marina was cleared. 32 boats, 26 positive alerts. At the Pomme de Terre facility, 9 boats entered through the north access at 4:47 a.m. K-9 teams recorded 7 positive alerts. The security contractor was escorted out at 4:48 a.m. He was sitting in the security booth doing paperwork. At the Beaver Lake, Arkansas Marina, 14 boats, 11 positive alerts. Agents recovered product from sealed live well cavities in plastic-wrapped 2-kilogram bricks, stacked exactly as the Warsaw Cruise modification had designed. The fish, live base from the previous event still in the upper tank, were transferred to oxygenated containers by Fish and Wildlife officers who had been embedded in the tactical staging for this purpose. The fish were returned to the lake the next day. At the Tulsa warehouse on North Sheridan Avenue, ATF tactical units breached through 3 points simultaneously at 4:47 a.m. Central Time. Inside, 2 pharmaceutical-grade pill presses, 7 kilograms of fentanyl powder in sealed laboratory containers, 3 bench workstations with residue consistent with extended pressing operations, and 94 weeks of production ledgers in a locked filing cabinet in the northeast corner of the building. The ledger documentation referenced supply chain contacts, receiving sources and downstream recipients that, as of this review, have not been publicly named in any unsealed court filing. Dale Harvik was located at the dock beside his compound at 5:03 a.m. He had been at the water's edge when agents arrived. The federal arrest documents do not specify what he had been doing there in the pre-dawn darkness, in the minutes before his circuit's entire operational structure was seized from beneath him. He was taken into custody without incident. By 7:30 a.m. on May 19, 2026, all 11 raid sites were secured. The count completed over the following 3 hours. 83 individuals in custody across 4 states. 2,140 pounds of fentanyl. $12 million in cash contained in 44 fiberglass tackle boxes. 47 tournament boats. 11 marina facilities. 1 production warehouse. 1 lakefront compound. Federal prosecutors at a noon press statement said the seized product represented enough fentanyl to deliver a lethal dose to every adult in the state of Missouri. Twice. The number received wide distribution in the afternoon media cycle. The number that did not receive equivalent coverage, 2,140 pounds, was the amount physically recovered on May 19. The Tulsa warehouse production ledgers, 94 weeks of documented output, indicated the network had moved approximately 3 times that volume since becoming operational in late 2025. Roughly 6,400 pounds of fentanyl across 7 months and 4 states. That product was not recovered in the raid. It is gone. The unsealed indictment named 83 defendants, 9 connected to the Tulsa production facility, 14 marina employees, 31 tournament event staff members, including 8 individuals who had worked weigh-in stations at 6 different lakes across 3 states. Harvik himself on 23 counts, conspiracy to distribute a controlled substance, money laundering through a continuing criminal enterprise, and RICO violations. Of the 83 named, 7 had not been located as of the week these records were reviewed. Among those 7, the financial intermediary who had first connected Harvik's circuit to the cartel supply chain. That individual appears in the sealed indictment once, name redacted, followed by the notation whereabouts unconfirmed. The DEA declined to comment on that individual at the May 19 press conference or subsequently. The 23 backup vessels were seized and cataloged. All 23 had been modified with the false floor system. None had ever been loaded with product. The Warsaw modification crew had been paid $400 per boat, regardless of whether the vessel was ever deployed. 4 of the 7-man crew were among those arrested on May 19. 3 were not. Offshore accounts connected to Harvik's 3 LLCs held approximately $34 million on the morning of the raid. Those accounts are currently under international asset recovery proceedings involving 3 jurisdictions. As of June 2026, none of that sum has been returned to federal custody. The structural model the circuit used is not unique to bass fishing. A publicly registered, publicly visible logistics operation with institutional legitimacy. Operating on a published and predictable schedule, with documented sponsorships and a social media audience, provides camouflage that's hard to beat. The circuit is gone. The template remains. Gerald Hutchins was notified by phone on the morning of May 19. He had continued to volunteer at Heartland Bass Tournament Circuit events throughout the months of the investigation, unaware officially that his October photographs had triggered anything. He was told at 8:47 a.m. that morning. His response logged in a DEA field report filed later that week. "I thought that pump sounded wrong." The circuit's summer 2026 tournament schedule had already been posted on its public website when the arrests happened. 140 events across 23 lakes, 8,000 registered anglers, partnerships confirmed with regional sponsors. The website was taken down at 6:15 a.m. on May 19. The Facebook page, 44,000 followers, 6 years of weigh-in videos and sponsorship announcements and junior league standings, was archived by federal agents as evidentiary material. The next event on the schedule had been May 24, 2026, at the Lake of the Ozarks. The weigh-in station would have been set up at the public dock where Gerald Hutchins stood 7 months earlier, listening to a pump that had no reason to be running. The network is dismantled. The 70-boat template exists now in case files and federal records and the institutional memory of 4 DEA field offices. The redacted name in the Tulsa indictment is still unaccounted for. 94 weeks of production ledgers describe a supply chain that has not been fully named in any public document. And the $75 million difference between what was laundered and what was recovered in tackle boxes on a May morning is, as of this writing, unaccounted for. The demand that created this operation, the demand that made a tournament director, a cartel logistics partner, and a weigh-in a distribution event, still exists. It existed before the Heartland Bass Tournament Circuit. It will exist after the trial. The fish in those 26 positive alert live wells were returned to the lake the next morning.